Welcome to NTD News Today.
Here are our top stories.
President Biden is set to call Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Find out more about the latest from the Israel-Hamas war.
Dozens are rescued and hundreds are still trapped following the powerful earthquake in Taiwan. We have the latest on the rescue efforts.
A judge denied former President Trump's request to delay his so-called hush money trial, saying it's too late. The latest on Trump's legal battles.
At least 3 are dead after tornadoes and thunderstorms bring devastation to the South and Midwest. A video of extensive flooding and more.
NATO celebrates its 75th anniversary today. The alliance plays an increasingly central role as the war in Ukraine enters its 3rd year.
The White House wants NASA to find out how to tell time on the moon. Why the moon would need its own time zone.
This is NTD News Today, live from our NTD Global Headquarters. Here are Stephania Cox and Chris Beers.
Hi, I'm David Lamb, sitting in for Chris Beers.
And to start the show, in Taiwan, emergency personnel are busy rescuing survivors of the powerful earthquake.
Many of those who were rescued had been trapped in mines, and many of those awaiting rescue are hikers in a mountainous national park.
The night was a terrible ordeal with aftershocks and tremors and rocks falling every few minutes. And in the morning, a few of us who spoke English got together and decided to go in one or the other direction, and we chose to go in the direction of the Parole Hotel. Thankfully, they had some first aid, so they got my husband some help to dress his wound.
Taiwan authorities say 70 people were rescued from 2 separate quarries, but 1 person was killed by falling rocks at a quarry.
In total, the death toll has risen to 10. At least 4 were killed inside Taroko National Park. It's a popular tourist attraction near the epicenter. Over 1,000 people were injured.
More than 700 people are still stranded, but most of them are in contact with rescue teams. Some 42 people are missing. Many of them are believed to be in Taroko National Park.
Entire sections of highways collapsed on the island's eastern coast, and landslides continue to pose a threat to people. In Hualien, which is the epicenter, workers have started demolishing damaged buildings. Residents in Taiwan recalled their fear after the island's worst earthquake in 25 years. NTD's Andrew Thomas finds out how locals are reacting to the natural disaster.
School children were terrified when an earthquake hit the eastern Taiwanese city of Hualien yesterday. One staff member described the chaos.
We could hear children screaming in the school. Indeed, it lasted for about a minute and all the children were terrified. Even when the tremors eased, some children couldn't walk. They were crying as they evacuated the building.
Linda Chen surveys the damage to her apartment. Her family believes it's now too dangerous to live in following yesterday's 7.2 magnitude earthquake. A 6.4 quake severely damaged their previous apartment in 2018. This is the second time one has forced her family to move.
Yesterday, when I was tidying up the apartment, I saw on the wall the record of the child's growth that I made, and I saw how this spot was damaged and felt really sad. I was thinking how the house could turn into something like this, and how the memories seemed to be destroyed all of a sudden.
Chen's son said he didn't risk spending too much time inside his old house.
It was cracked all over the place, so I didn't dare to stay in it for too long. It feels like it's about to fall after the next quake, and the walls are all cracked. Too outrageous, too serious.
Over 300 aftershocks followed the deadly quake, forcing people into emergency shelters. Most of Hualien avoided major damage. Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
The Chinese Communist Party is using the earthquake in Taiwan to reiterate its political stance that Taiwan is part of China. In response, Taiwan condemned the CCP as shameless.
After the quake hit Taiwan yesterday, China's deputy representative to the United Nations thanked the international community for its concern.
Taiwan's foreign ministry condemned, quote, China's shameless use of the Taiwan earthquake to conduct cognitive operations internationally. That's what Taiwan's term for what it calls China's psychological warfare is.
The CCP claims democratically governed Taiwan as its own territory and the right to speak for it on the international stage. This, despite the CCP never having ruled the island and having no say in how it chooses its leaders. Turning our attention now to the Israel-Hamas war, President Biden will be having a phone call with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu.
This will be their first phone call since March 18th and the first one since the death of 7 aid workers in Gaza.
The founder of World Central Kitchen blamed Israel for attacking the convoy of the aid workers. He said the strike was an unfortunate mistake and demanded an independent investigation.
At the same time, the Israeli military is halting leave for all combat units. This comes amid threats of retaliation from Iran.
And a day earlier, the military said it had drafted reservists to boost aerial defenses.
And the Biden administration is backing off on refilling America's emergency oil stockpile. The president began drawing down the reserve in 2021 to address soaring fuel prices. The Energy Department says the administration will no longer buy up to 3 million barrels of crude for a reserve site in Louisiana. The department says the shift comes amid rising prices at the gas pump. According to AAA, the national average climbed by 20 cents over the past month to $3.55. Prices have climbed over fears the war in the Middle East could escalate and disrupt oil supplies. Joining us now to discuss is Tommy Waller, President and CEO of the Center for Security Policy. Tommy, welcome. Good to speak with you. To begin with, I'd like to start with what are the risks of a low petroleum reserve for national security?
Well, the Strategic Petroleum Reserve is, of course, a strategic asset, right? And for national security, we have to recognize our country runs on petroleum. Our military, other than the nuclear, submarines and other assets, everything relies on petroleum and fossil fuel. It's what actually works. Unfortunately, the Biden administration has tried to press, electric vehicles on the military, and those just won't handle the job. So we got to look at it from that perspective as when we draw down a reserve of an asset that we need for both our economy and our military, it's going to hurt our national security.
Could a low oil reserve make our energy grid more vulnerable to attacks?
So with respect to the Strategic Petroleum Reserve itself, it's not so much the connection between the amount of fuel that would be in that reserve and an incentive for a cyber attack to happen. You mentioned before, Stephanie, the cognitive warfare. When an enemy sees us in a position of weakness and vulnerability because we've purposely allowed these types of reserves to be drained, that's what incentivizes more of an attack. Look, right now we're vulnerable to physical attack and cyber attack in our electric grid. The Biden administration knows this. Unfortunately, despite many petitions by organizations like our own, they have not increased neither the cyber nor the physical security standards of the very energy grid that you just mentioned.
And what are you recommending in particular?
Well, one example, Stephanie, is just that there be a requirement to identify and mitigate malware in the electric grid. And there is no such requirement. We petitioned years ago for the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission to make this a mandate. And so when the federal government refuses to increase and enhance its security standards, what happens is it really falls on the states to be able to pick up the slack with that.
Now, Tommy, given the price of oil as it is now, what do you think should be done to replenish our reserves?
Well, ultimately, what we need, Stephanie, is a reversal of what the Biden administration has done. Look, those that founded, the wise people that founded the concept for the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, they did so in response to economic warfare on the United States. And what the Biden administration has done is economic warfare on the fossil fuel industry in such a way that it's harmed our country economically, militarily, strategically. And so we absolutely need to refill the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. And then we need to go back to the concept of increasing oil exploration and regaining the energy independence that we had before this president entered office.
And just considering all of the dynamics around the world right now, the tensions and the wars, what in particular does the U.S. need in terms of the oil stocks? What do you think we need to replenish it to?
Look, the more the better, right? And so when you look at whether it be petroleum reserves, whether it be domestic exploration on the fossil fuel side, or, for example, just not curtailing coal and nuclear power plants and the type of research and development needed to be able to get to the next generation of nuclear. What this administration has done in every single area of our national security is made the country less safe. This country has so much potential, so much innovation, and it needs to be unlocked. And again, Stephanie, we have provided recommendation after recommendation to this particular Secretary of Energy, and I'm going to do it again in her advisory board next week, on ways that we can do just that. And they have willfully refused on every occasion.
And yet I think most voters would want to see our reserves, full. And what do you think is in the way of making this change happen?
I think it's a political and an ideological thing, Stephanie. If you think about it, what has President Biden chosen to do at nearly every occasion? He's chosen to allow the most ideologically left and radical people in his party to control what he's doing. So if you think about it from a philosophical standpoint, the idea of him paying for fuel to go back in the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, well, what does that say? It says that fossil fuels are a thing, that they're important, that they're necessary. And from an ideological perspective, from the very hard left Marxist elements of his party, that's a no-go. And so what does he generally do? Well, he follows what they want. Right. And so I hate to say it, Stephanie, but it could be, I don't know what's in the man's heart, but it could be a philosophical and a political thing. And I'll just say one last bit. We have in this country the ability to provide carbon-free, clean electricity for 150 to 250 years with an asset that is readily available, spent nuclear fuel. Right. And this is a concept that I've briefed the Secretary of Energy on twice, recommending that we harness that.
Okay.
And so there's so much promise for energy security in this country. It just needs we just need leadership that will do it.
A hopeful note to finish on. Thank you so much, Tommy Waller, President and CEO of the Center for Security Policy. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Now, an update on the civil and criminal proceedings against former President Trump. A judge denied Trump's request to delay an April 15th trial in his so-called hush money case. Here's the story.
Trump requested last month his so-called hush money trial be delayed until the Supreme Court reviews a claim to presidential immunity in a separate case. His lawyers argue the review was relevant because prosecutors want to present evidence from Trump while he was serving as president. But Judge Juan Merchan denied the motion. He said Trump's lawyers should have filed it months ago. This case could be the only one to go to trial before the November election. He also seeks a delay on the basis that news coverage on the case has led potential jurors to believe he's already guilty. Merchan has not yet ruled on that request. Meanwhile, the former president is also fighting charges over classified government documents kept after leaving office. Trump's lawyers in a new court filing revealed he kept classified materials at Trump Tower in New York City and at his estate in New Jersey. This on top of documents found at Mar-a-Lago. In the filing, lawyers argue jurors could be told that Trump had the legal power to classify those documents as personal rather than presidential belongings. A 1978 law called the Presidential Records Act allows former presidents to keep records that have no connection to official responsibilities. U.S. Special Counsel Jack Smith, who is leading the case against Trump, called Trump's argument fundamentally flawed. Smith said the documents in question related to military and intelligence matters, including details about America's nuclear program. He said they could not be construed as personal and vowed to appeal any decision by the judge that would instruct jurors to consider it.
2 men pleaded guilty to insider trading in the company that ultimately took former President Trump's media business public. NTD's Daniel Monahan has more on the case.
Michael Schwartzman, head of Miami-based venture capital firm Rocket One Capital, and his brother Gerald Schwartzman each pleaded guilty in Manhattan to 1 count of securities fraud. Rocket One's chief investment officer Bruce Garelick is scheduled to face trial on related charges on April 29th. The indictment against them did not in any way implicate Trump or Trump Media and Technology Group, which owns his Truth Social platform. Prosecutors charged the trio last year with illegally trading on inside information about Trump Media and Technology Group's plan to go public through a merger with a blank check company. That's a development stage company with no concrete business plan or one that has the intent to merge with or acquire another firm. Prosecutors say the trio signed confidentiality agreements in June 2021 when they were approached to become early investors in Digital World Acquisition, the blank check company. The agreements required them to keep information they learned confidential and not trade the company's securities in the open market. After hearing the company was in merger talks with TMTG, prosecutors say the trio tipped others and bought Digital World securities. After the deal was announced in October 2021, they sold them to make a total of $22 million in illegal profit. Michael and Gerald Schwartzman said in court that they knew what they were doing was wrong when they traded on non-public information. Gerald Schwartzman said at the hearing, "I've made a terrible mistake." U.S. Attorney Damian Williams said, "Insider trading is cheating, plain and simple," after the pleas. The Schwartzmans are scheduled to be sentenced on July 17th. Securities fraud carries a maximum sentence of 20 years in prison. The average prison sentence in federal fraud cases in the U.S. last year was around 2 years. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
A domestic Democratic Nebraska state senator is changing parties to become a Republican. Mike McDonald says he's switching sides because of his Christian faith and his views on abortion. McDonald won election in 2016 and 2020 as a pro-life Democratic candidate. Then, local Democrats voted not to seat him as a delegate and won't share party resources. And at the state level, the Democratic Party also voted to censure him.
The Nebraska Democratic Party denies that the censure vote had anything to do with his personal pro-life views. Instead, they said it was to reaffirm the party's stance on abortion access. McDonald says being a Christian is more important to him than being a Democrat.
Now, this move could help former President Trump in this year's presidential election. That's because Nebraska doesn't have a winner-takes-all electoral system.
So even if Republicans win the state, Democrats have generally been taking home one of the state's 5 electoral college votes.
Trump and Nebraska's governor have advocated to change the system, but the measure failed to pass a procedural vote in Nebraska's legislature last night.
Still, one more Republican state senator is unlikely to help, as it failed by a significant margin.
Coming up, police in Ohio charge an illegal immigrant with murder. The local sheriff says he's been deported 7 times. House lawmakers open a new investigation into a spike of immigration cases dismissed since President Biden took office.
New York City marathon organizers are crying foul after the Metropolitan Transportation Authority demands major money for a bridge closure. More in just a moment, here on NTD News Today.
My name's Jen Marshall. I've been playing professional football in Women's League for 3 years now. We're about 3.5 weeks out of my second surgery now. I had no pain whatsoever, no tingling, no numbness, and I felt incredible. I'm able to do pretty much anything. He doesn't want me pushing it too much, but I'm able to do, assisted pull-ups now. I'm riding a bike. I'm walking continuously at an incline on treadmills. I can do push-ups again. I can get out of bed, no problem. You're in great hands.
Bonatti succeeds where others fail.
I have never seen a production any better than this, anywhere.
Breathtaking. It is absolutely stunning.
I feel better about the world. I feel uplifted.
Invigorating. It was encouraging. Gave me hope.
This has just been therapy for the soul.
It's a must-see. Must-see.
Make sure you see it. Make sure you see it.
Coming to Lincoln Center, April 3rd through the 14th. Buy tickets now at shenyun.com.
بیست و 16 سال عمري ما هفت
اما داعش کردیم برانبر خوشکو دایکان یزدی اما کاری که دور لهمو چمک دموکراسی و موافقانی مرو و انسانیت او بارو خی که است های به تایبت ایران خوشکوریا بشه که دگرت با حالانه که اداره اوباما کرد
ریم بو او هفت روز بو و داعش از کرد تامبو كرا قوتينيز قريا بما متشكر بهار في لنا بباوان رحمنا قدامنا سؤالنا من خادران نزل باوان نفستم بس أنا قبس ناش بجوش بانش.
They would literally be auctioned in front of soldiers, and then the soldiers begin to bid.
زارودوان همو جيبرن تي حمري زارود الدم واسي سيبان همو جيبرن
وحشیگری کی توا عیاره ظلمی کی یک جار زور گوره لما افراتانه کرا و تعدایی که زور زوریان لیده که همانه روزانه دست فروشیده.
Imagine being a child, having a child mentality, and these evil people come and wheel you away from the only safety you've ever known.
Join us on NTD Good Morning because we want you to stay informed.
Kickstart your morning with the latest you missed overnight.
Right, and don't forget that inspiration.
Absolutely, so let's shine some light on the good news too.
Tune in every weekday morning to NTD News.
At least 3 people were killed and several were injured after a powerful storm system spawned tornadoes and damaging storms from the south to the Ohio Valley. 2 people were killed by falling trees when storms swept through Pennsylvania yesterday. An 82-year-old woman was killed in Collegeville, and a 70-year-old man was killed in Aston Township after trees fell on their vehicles while driving.
Streets in the Midwest were transformed into rivers after extensive flooding. Strong winds and heavy rain can be seen outside a house in Kentucky after a tornado warning.
In Kentucky, at least 1 person was killed as a result of destructive storms there on Tuesday.
Severe thunderstorms brought flooding, downed trees, power outages, and road blockages across West Virginia. At least 13 homes were damaged and some residents were injured in Fayette County. Baltimore Mayor Brandon Scott says the city will provide $1 million in wage subsidies to support workers after the bridge disaster.
The mayor says the funds will offer businesses support to help keep employees on the payroll during work disruption. The action is similar to COVID-19 relief programs.
Scott says the money is an important first step, but not nearly enough to cover all businesses or workers affected. Baltimore port workers are losing a combined $2 million in daily wages.
The construction company that had several workers on the bridge when it was struck has set up a relief fund for the families of those killed.
President Biden is set to travel to Baltimore tomorrow to survey the damage from last week's deadly collapse.
New York City Marathon organizers will soon have to pay a bridge toll like other commuters if the New York Transit officials have their way. The Metropolitan Transportation Authority, or MTA, is demanding the New York road runners pay roughly $750,000 for the use of Verrazano Narrows Bridge.
The MTA says the fee represents the estimated toll revenue lost when the nation's longest suspension bridge is closed, but the Roadrunners group has pushed back.
They argue the MTA enjoys increased revenue from greater transit ridership during Marathon Week. The organization also says the 2019 marathon generated about $425 million for the city.
Florida Governor Ron DeSantis now commenting on an immigration program by the Biden administration. It allows migrants to fly directly into the U.S. A report this week found that over 80% of those flights land in Florida.
First of all, it's an illegal program. They're bringing people in who don't have a right to be in this country. Someone that Biden flew into America, ended up in Massachusetts, now is under charges for sexual assault against a developmentally disabled 14-year-old girl.
Since last fall, over 380,000 migrants flew directly into the U.S. It's part of a parole program started by the Biden administration.
A report this week by the Center for Immigration Studies found over 320,000 immigrants landed in Florida. DeSantis says the state hasn't noticed a sudden uptick in immigrants arriving in Florida.
He added they might land in Florida and then head to sanctuary cities like New York or Chicago. And House Republicans opened a new investigation into a sharp rise of immigration cases dismissed since President Biden took office.
This as Texas attorneys went back to an appeals court to defend the state's new immigration law.
And police in Ohio arrest and charge an illegal immigrant from Mexico with murder. The local sheriff says the suspect has been deported 7 times and jailed 11 times under 7 different names.
NTD's Jeremy Sandberg has an update on the border crisis.
A Syracuse University-sponsored data research organization called TRACK estimates over 192,000 immigration cases have been dismissed since the start of fiscal year 2021 due to DHS officials failing to provide notice to appear paperwork to courts. House lawmakers are asking DHS Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas, along with the acting director for the DOJ's Executive Office for Immigration Review, Mary Chang, to confirm the total number dismissed over DHS errors since President Biden took office. DHS officials must provide a notice to appear document to the person they believe should be deported and submit a copy to an immigration judge before removal can proceed. TRACK's data shows roughly 1 in 4 of these errors has been corrected since fiscal year 2021 began. The Judiciary Committee wants records by April 17th. Meanwhile, Texas attorneys were back before the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, defending the state's new immigration law. The law, known as SB 4, allows state officials to arrest and jail people they suspect of entering the country illegally and lets state judges order deportations. The Texas Solicitor General, in oral arguments Wednesday, said the law was meant to enforce federal immigration laws that he alleged the Biden administration is ignoring, and said the law might not be necessary under a different administration. The state's top lawyer said lawmakers aim to go up to the line of Supreme Court precedent, admitting maybe Texas went too far. He argued if the court finds some aspects invalid, it should sever those parts without striking down the entire law. Meanwhile, police in Ohio arrested and charged the 46-year-old suspect from Mexico for a murder in Butler County. The Butler County Sheriff addressed the same individual last week, warning the suspect has been deported 7 times.
He's carrying a loaded firearm. How does he get that loaded firearm? He's not carrying that pistol to go hunting. These people aren't vetted. They're coming across, and we have no idea who they are.
The sheriff says the illegal immigrant has been jailed 11 times, under 7 different names and 3 birthdays. Jeremy Sandberg, NTD News.
And joining us now is NTD's Business Matters host, Don Ma, to give us the latest updates from the tech and business world.
Don, welcome. What do you have for us today?
Yeah, so we're talking about Apple and Disney today, 2 very big companies, and I'll start off with Disney. So the bitter board battle at Disney has come to an end yesterday, and let me explain to you what that's all about. So a major win, it seems like, for the head of Disney, Bob Iger. So what happened was that shareholders voted to back Bob Iger and fend off activist shareholders in its annual meeting yesterday. Billionaire investor and head of Trian Partners, Nelson Peltz, was fighting for a seat on the board, and he was advocating for change at the entertainment media giant. The company voted to re-elect the full board by a substantial margin, according to Disney. So Peltz's loss is also a vote of confidence in Iger and the current board and the direction of the company is heading towards. So in a statement, Iger said, and I'll read this to you, "With the distracting proxy contest now behind us, we're eager to focus 100% of our attention on our most important priorities, growth and value creation." Now, Peltz said that he and his partners will continue to watch the company's performance. This apparently was a pricey showdown. Trian Partners estimates that it spent about $25 million on its campaign, while Disney's estimate came in around $40 million to fend off the proxy fight. Disney stock yesterday fell around 3% at market close.
All right, so tell us about the Apple outage next.
Yeah, so not good news, it seems like, for Apple, because many Apple users were unable to access their favorite apps for a brief period of time yesterday, and some of the services affected by the outage included the App Store, Apple TV, Apple Music, and Apple Podcasts. And the status page of the Apple system noted an outage for those services that began around 6:30 in the evening Eastern Time. And the outage appears to have been resolved about an hour later, so not too bad here. The outage comes hours after some Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp users also reporting issues that those apps had earlier in the day.
All right, Don, thank you so much for giving the viewers and us an update on this. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
And coming up, today marks 75 years of the NATO alliance. A look back at the first steps and current challenges moving into the 2024 election. That and more when we return.
In Scotland, police say J.K. Rowling hasn't committed a crime. The writer says freedom of speech and belief are at an end in Scotland if it's illegal to state facts. We'll explain the controversy when we return.
Hey everyone, it's me, Sebastian, and it is a beautiful day today. We have so much to be grateful for, so just remember, if you see someone without a smile, give them one of yours. I just love inspiring people to be the best they can be, and the reason I'm able to inspire so many people is because people like you who inspire me with your support of Shriners Hospitals for Children. Since I was little, I've broken 100 bones, and I've had 19 surgeries. Shriners Hospitals for Children was with me every step of the way. But more than that, they've given me the confidence to know I can do whatever I set my mind to. Like right now, I've set my mind to sharing my smile with you. Did you get it?
Because of people like you, I can play the violin.
I can play piano.
I can Irish dance.
The help I get is only possible because of caring people like you who pick up the phone and call the number on your screen to make your monthly gift.
And when you call or go online right now to donate $19 a month or more, we'll send you this adorable Love to the Rescue blanket as a thank you and a reminder of all the smiles you're bringing to kids' faces every day.
Kids like me. And me. And me. And me. So what are you waiting for? You can inspire kids like me by visiting loveshriners.org. After all, you can't help everyone, but you can help someone. So let's go!
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for giving. Join me and bring a smile to the world with your monthly gift today.
Please call now. If operators are busy, please call again or go to loveshriners.org right away.
Join me and bring a smile to the world.
I was born into the wrong body, Mom. I was astounded by what they were teaching. Child Protective Services did show up at my house. Parents are fearful of losing custody of their children because they say the wrong thing. Risks?
No risks. We got everything covered, I assure you, Mrs. Connors.
They don't want anyone to know the truth.
I can't stay quiet about this anymore. It's destroyed my health.
We're pushed into silence.
Some things are better left to a professional.
In hindsight, probably shouldn't have tried to remove my own appendix.
Like when it comes to finding financial advisors.
What was I thinking?
So leave it to Smart Asset to find them for you. Take the free quiz at smartasset.com. Then you'll be matched with up to 3 vetted fiduciary financial advisors. To get started, take the Advisor Match quiz now at smartasset.com.
I was this close. This close.
NATO foreign ministers celebrated the 75th anniversary of the organization today as the war in Ukraine enters its 3rd year. Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg said the alliance strengthens regional security for all members.
Europe needs America for its security. Fair burden sharing is essential. And Europe is investing more, much more. This year, the majority of NATO allies will invest at least 2% of their GDP in defense. At the same time, North America also needs Europe.
NATO started with 12 members, founded in response to the Soviet Union and the beginning of the Cold War. At its heart is the concept of collective defense.
Article 5 of the treaty makes an attack on one member considered an attack on all.
75 years later, NATO has 32 members and has taken a central role in world affairs.
Now Russia's war in Ukraine has led European governments to view Moscow as a major security threat once again.
NATO commemorating 75 years, as we just mentioned. So let's take a look back at its beginnings and the new challenges the organization faces. NTD's Daniel Monahan has more on the alliance and the presidential election this fall, offering a sharp contrast in terms of the American role in NATO.
The alliance dates back to April 4th, 1949, when foreign ministers from 12 countries signed the North Atlantic Treaty in Washington, D.C.
This treaty is a simple document. The nations which sign it agree to abide by the peaceful principles of the United Nations.
NATO's founding member countries were Belgium, Canada, Denmark, France, Iceland, Italy, Luxembourg, the Netherlands, Norway, Portugal, the United Kingdom, and the United States. Senior policy analyst Robert Benson says the existence of NATO has maintained a really durable peace within the Euro-Atlantic zone.
The history of Europe has been one of, perpetual conflict. Up until the realization of NATO 75 years ago in 1949.
The recent accession of Sweden and Finland is the most significant expansion of the alliance in decades. NATO's expansion to now include 32 members is seen by many as a blow to Russian President Vladimir Putin.
Before the war started, I told Putin that if he invaded Ukraine, NATO would not only get stronger, but would get more united.
Biden says Putin got exactly what he didn't want.
He wanted the Finlandization of NATO, but he's getting the NATOization of Finland along with Sweden.
The Russian leader has sought to prevent any further strengthening of the alliance. Analysts say one of NATO's challenges is the transformation to refocus on defending against any Russian attack. This after decades in which NATO concentrated on missions beyond its borders, such as in Afghanistan or the Balkans. NATO will also have to manage differences over how involved it should become in Asia. The United States is pushing for a greater role in countering China, while others such as France insist NATO must maintain focus on the North Atlantic area. The 2024 election will have a significant effect on NATO as well. Policy analyst Robert Benson calls Biden a true Atlanticist. That's someone who believes cooperation between North America and Europe is essential.
I think that he has demonstrated, particularly after the illegal and unjustified invasion of Ukraine, that NATO matters.
Former President Trump has used a firmer hand with the alliance, berating them to contribute more.
The one that benefits really the least is the United States. We benefit the least. We're helping Europe.
Trump says NATO is now taking in billions of dollars more because of him. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
More from Europe, a joint effort by Helsinki and Washington to fend off foreign disinformation. The U.S. today signing a memorandum of understanding with Finland.
Officials from both countries are in Brussels today for a NATO meeting.
To combat one of the new challenges of our time, which is misinformation. Information that governments use to exploit divisions in our respective societies.
The NATO meeting marks exactly 1 year since Finland joined the alliance. This came in direct response to Russia's invasion of Ukraine.
Russia yesterday accused NATO of returning to a Cold War mindset. This as tensions between the two sides are at the highest they've been in decades.
A cruise ship will set sail again after being stuck in Spain because of invalid visas.
Spanish authorities didn't allow around 70 Bolivian nationals to disembark the vessel in Barcelona. This prevented the ship with hundreds on board from continuing its journey.
The Bolivian passengers were later removed from the boat and taken to a transit zone in the port. They were not granted permission to enter Spanish territory.
The passengers appeared to have valid visas when they boarded the vessel in South America, but Spanish authorities later said they're invalid.
The Bolivian embassy in Spain suggested the passengers might have fallen for a visa scam in South America. Finland is indefinitely extending the closure of land border crossings with Russia. It's also going to add several ports to a list where travel from Russia is prohibited.
The European nation shut its land borders with Russia late last year. This came amid an influx of people from countries including Syria and Somalia. Finland accuses Moscow of weaponizing migration in retaliation for joining NATO.
Despite the border closure, a few immigrants have continued to arrive from Russia. Finland believes the numbers could rise significantly as temperatures start rising in spring. Germany is restructuring its military. This includes a new central command and a dedicated branch for cyberspace.
The country's defense minister made the announcement today. This expands Germany's military overhaul, which began in response to Russia's invasion of Ukraine. The minister says no country should have the idea of attacking Germany.
The defense minister says the German military needs an additional $7 billion in the 2025 budget. That's as lawmakers try to hit a long-neglected NATO spending target.
J.K. Rowling, author of the Harry Potter series, recently challenged police to arrest her when she arrives in Scotland. This over the country's new law. Scotland's Hate Crime and Public Order Act makes it illegal to stir up hatred based on elements such as age, religion, and gender identity. For analysis, I spoke with Colin Wright, evolutionary biologist and fellow at the Manhattan Institute, as well as founding editor of the Reality's Last Stand publication. Colin, welcome. Great to see you again. Now, let's talk about speech laws. Police say J.K. Rowling committed no crime under Scotland's new hate crime law. What's your reaction?
Well, I mean, it's fortunate that she wasn't convicted of any crimes, because I think the crime that has been created and recently passed in Scotland, which, creates a really vague term called stirring up hatred, and has a really sort of subjective way that enforces these. It says that these hate crimes are committed when a reasonable person would consider to be threatening or abusive or insulting, and also criminalizes individuals who give materials to another person that a reasonable person could be considered, insulting and offensive. I think that the Scottish police, they're afraid in many senses to convict J.K. Rowling of any type of hate crime under this law, because she is really essentially daring them to arrest her, because J.K. Rowling knows very well that if she were to be arrested, this would create just this enormous backlash, not a violent one, but an ideological backlash to both the hate crime bills that are censoring free speech on issues of great importance, like just being able to call men men and women women, and observing biological reality.
Now, in the U.S., we don't have any laws similar to Scotland's, but on the local level at schools, there are policies on misgendering somebody. So what's the reality here?
So we're fortunate in the U.S. where we have much broader and more robust free speech laws, but we've found ourselves in a strange place, because even though the government isn't involved in censoring our free speech, there's some exceptions to that, we've sort of outsourced the censorious nature to our communities. So people are very afraid to speak up about these things, because a lot of activists who are armed with social media accounts engage in these cancellation campaigns where they swarm individuals who aren't just stating or fully agreeing with sort of these dogmas, especially related to transgender issues, where they don't want people to talk about the reality of males and females, the binary nature of sex, and the immutability of sex. So yes, we're seeing this on the local level, being implemented in schools under sort of anti-bullying harassment, where you're not allowed to, quote unquote, misgender someone, which in reality is just accurately sexing them and making basic claims about reality. So we need to make sure the parents are pushing back locally against this type of stuff, because once this is normalized at a local level, it's just going to expand from there. We may find ourselves in a situation like Scotland, where we're passing these Orwellian hate laws that literally just make you not be able to talk about plain biological facts.
In terms of freedom of speech and liberty, if someone unintentionally or intentionally calls somebody by a different gender that they don't, that they don't approve of, is that considered harassment?
I don't think saying anything that's true is harassment. Now, there's a distinction, if you're just haranguing somebody and you're going out of your way to just message them on social media nonstop and call them things, it could raise to a level of harassment if you were just berating someone about this in the workplace or on social media. But if you're just stating plain facts about reality, especially in areas where it matters, if you're in a legal setting, absolutely not. We cannot make stating reality harassment. That's absurd in my view.
All right, Colin, thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, thank you.
Up ahead, the White House wants NASA to find out how to tell time on the moon, why the moon would need its own time zone.
Busy medical students in Australia make time to play live music for cancer patients, an uplifting story of compassion and giving back after the break.
Hi, I'm Caleb, and this is my story. I was born with osteogenesis imperfecta, or brittle bone disease. I have broken my bones almost 200 times, and I have had 11 surgeries. But I didn't let that stop me. I love to bike ride, climb, race, and I'm learning how to stand and walk. But I can only do all of this because of generous people like you and Shriners Hospitals for Children.
Because of people like you, Shriners Hospitals for Children has helped more than 1.3 million kids just like me, regardless of their family's ability to pay.
Shriners Hospitals for Children is only able to provide this world-class, life-changing medical care because of the generous gifts of people just like you.
Because of you, I can ride my bike. I can play basketball.
Because of people like you, I can run.
I can smile.
Will you send your love to the rescue today?
When you go to loveshriners.org right now and give just 63 cents a day, you're helping kids just like me.
Like me. Like me.
When you give today, we'll send you this adorable Love to the Rescue blanket as a thank you and a reminder of the love you gave to a kid just like me.
Your gift, no matter how small, can help a child today.
This is your moment to make a difference.
When you pick up your phone, I know you have it right there, and call to give. You're helping kids like me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Gracias.
Thank you.
Please call or go online now. If operators are busy, please call again or give right away at loveshriners.org.
Your gift makes a difference. Thank you for giving.
Hillsdale College is reaching and teaching millions of Americans to pursue truth and defend liberty. But to do that in an even bigger way, we need your help. Your generous support helps educate students from kindergarten to college, all while refusing every penny of government funding, even indirect funding like student loans or grants. And your dedicated giving allows us to teach millions of Americans through our free online courses. You make all the difference. Give a gift today. Just use this link.
Here you go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Iris Tao at the White House, and we are NTD.
Three New York counties located along Lake Ontario are declaring a state of emergency due to the upcoming total solar eclipse on April 8th. Oswego County expects the area's population to double ahead of the natural phenomenon. Most government buildings and facilities will be closed except for essential operations. New York Governor Kathy Hochul warned travelers to expect high traffic during several eclipse viewing events. She said lane closures and construction will be halted ahead of the astronomical event. Other U.S. counties and states have done the same. Indiana Governor Eric Holcomb declared a state of emergency last week. Ohio's Summit County has advised residents to stay home due to expected traffic congestion.
And the White House wants NASA to set a universal time standard for the moon. But what does that actually mean? Let's dive in.
It's 5:24 p.m. Central Time, but know that there is some give and take.
It comes as no surprise that moon time differs from Earth time.
As the U.S. aims to set international norms amid a growing lunar race, the White House has given NASA a directive to establish a unified time standard for the moon. NASA must work with other parts of the U.S. government to set Coordinated Lunar Time, or LTC, by the end of 2026. That's according to a memo seen by Reuters from the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy, or OSTP. Here's what's at play. The differing gravitational force and potentially other factors on the moon change how time unfolds relative to how it is perceived on Earth. The OSTP memo says that for a person on the moon, an Earth-based clock would appear to lose about 58.7 microseconds per Earth day. Having a standard time would provide a timekeeping benchmark for lunar spacecraft and satellites that require extreme precision. Under its Artemis program, NASA is planning more astronaut missions to the moon in coming years. It aims to establish a scientific lunar base that could help set the stage for future missions to Mars. Dozens of companies, spacecraft, and countries are involved in the effort. Other countries also have their own lunar ambitions. China has said it aims to put its first astronauts on the moon by 2030, while India last year became the first country to land a spacecraft near the unexplored lunar South Pole. An OSTP official said that without a unified lunar time standard, it would be challenging to ensure data integrity and synchronized communications between Earth, lunar satellites, bases, and astronauts. Time discrepancies could also lead to errors in mapping and locating positions on or orbiting the moon, the official said. On Earth, most clocks and time zones are based on Coordinated Universal Time, or UTC. This internationally recognized standard relies on a vast global network of atomic clocks placed around the world. They measure changes in the state of atoms and generate an average that ultimately makes up a precise time. The deployment of atomic clocks on the lunar surface may be needed, according to the OSTP official. The OSTP memo says that implementing LTC will require international agreements through existing standards bodies and among the 36 nations that have signed a pact called the Artemis Accords, which involve how countries act in space and on the moon. China and Russia, the two main U.S. rivals in space, have not signed the accords.
At a hospital in Australia, a string quartet performs for patients and staff in the cancer unit. The musicians happen to be second-year medical students. They put on a live show every 2 weeks, despite a grueling schedule. Here's their story.
Doctors train long and hard to gain the knowledge and expertise to serve others. These medical students take time out from their challenging schedules to play music for cancer patients at Gold Coast University Hospital in Australia.
So we just found a few people who played string instruments, so we wanted to make an ensemble together so that we could connect and play. And we were just thinking of ways to, do some good with our music.
Patients, their families, and staff love the live performances.
I thought I was in the wrong place. I thought, I'm not in a concert hall, yet it's live music. As you can always tell, live music is compared to something that comes out of electronics and speakers.
The music really does give them a sense of joy, a sense of community and belonging, and that's for both the people listening but also the people playing the music.
Medical students usually have a grueling schedule, including classes, studying, homework, research, and more. Why do these future doctors take time to play in the quartet on top of their busy schedules?
A lot of times in medicine, if you don't give the time to volunteer, you will spend it all just studying. And I think volunteering is a great opportunity to just take a step back. I think give back.
For patients, the music is a welcome and uplifting respite from the problems they face.
I've got various things happening inside my body that grow and probably eventually put an end to you. So what better way to go out than the beautiful sounds of these young people in the string quartet.
Many describe doctors as compassionate and empathetic. These volunteers already seem to be exhibiting those traits well ahead of their degrees.
Before we head into the break, we have an important announcement about a change in our airtime if you haven't heard it yet.
Starting Monday, April 8th, NTD News Today will run from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern, bringing you 3 full hours of news coverage and analysis.
But for round-the-clock updates and more content, visit ntd.com or download our NTD app.
There are real consequences to controlled media. And NTD's founders know them firsthand. Our freedom of thought is the price. This is the lesson that guides us in everything we do.
So there's the tear gas there.
We know the value of a free society. And we take seriously the responsibility to preserve it. We are NTD.
Hi, I'm Susan Lucci. I never thought about heart disease until I had my own heart event.
When I drink it, the first thing was it.
Hi, I'm Susan Lucci. I never thought about heart disease until I had my own heart event. I received 2 stents in my arteries, stents developed through research funded by the American Heart Association. Those stents saved my life. I have met so many survivors. Each of them tells a story that can be so helpful to women out there.
Everything was pretty good. It was a very happy life. I was given the diagnosis that I had peripartum cardiomyopathy, which is basically a pregnancy-induced heart failure. They told me my only chance was a heart transplant.
And the American Heart Association helped make that possible. Their research helped save me.
I think everyone should support the American Heart Association. Call now or go to helpheart.org. For only $19 a month, just 63 cents a day, you can help fund the next medical breakthrough. Get the next person trained in CPR, the next hospital certified in high-quality cardiovascular care. You can be part of that very important work that the American Heart Association is doing to save lives everywhere. Give $19 a month with your credit card, and we'll send you this special t-shirt that you can wear to show that you are helping save lives.
I'm grateful for just every day that I get with my children. I am very thankful for the American Heart Association.
Heart disease is America's #1 killer, and your support now can help save your life or the life of someone you love. Listen to your heart. The only reason I'm here today is because I did. So please call the number on your screen or go to helpheart.org now. Join me as a monthly donor today and help save even more lives.
When I drink it, the first thing was it. I feel the warmth in my tummy. It's kind of like gently radiating out, a kind of a very comforting warmth. And it was really good, actually. I felt much better. I did feel, actually, the effect. And I find that it is actually better when I take it regularly.
It's actually steamed and dried 9 times. And so it's really, the essence is really extracted.
Then the second time, I tried it really like on an empty stomach and just 2 teaspoons of it and over a few times. And wow, that was a big difference because suddenly I could feel, wow, I was very good energized. I didn't have to eat. I could work outside in the garden for a couple of hours and I still felt very well. And I was impressed by that. So I think it's a good product.
Hi, I'm Kelly Wright. We thank you for joining us and watching America's Hope here on NTD News. Bottom line is, I know you're sick and tired of being sick and tired, but let's give you some good news in the midst of the bad news. Watch us nightly, right here on NTD News, for a full dose of America's Hope.
Welcome to NTD News Today.
Here are our top stories.
A powerful nor'easter packing wind and snow is moving through the Great Lakes and Northeast. Which states are affected?
The latest updates on former President Trump's looming New York hush money trial, and why the prosecutor in the classified documents case is pushing back on the judge in that case.
Dozens are rescued and hundreds still trapped following the powerful earthquake in Taiwan. We have the latest on the rescue efforts.
Today marks 75 years of the NATO alliance, a look back at the first steps and current challenges as many nations hold elections this year.
U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen is visiting China for top-level economic talks, and she sends a tough message to Beijing.
A large selection of works by a 19th century British art movement is on display beside the works of the Italian masters who inspired them. A closer look at the exhibition featuring over 300 pieces.
This is NTD News Today, live from our NTD Global Headquarters. Here are Stephania Cox and Chris Beers.
Hi, I'm David Lamb, sitting in for Chris Beers.
To begin the show, in Taiwan, emergency personnel are busy rescuing survivors of the powerful earthquake.
Many of those who were rescued had been trapped in mines, and many of those awaiting rescue are hikers in a mountainous national park.
The night was a terrible, terrible ordeal, with aftershocks and tremors and rocks falling every few minutes. And in the morning, a few of us who spoke English got together and decided to go in one or the other direction, and we chose to go in the direction of the Taroko Hotel. Thankfully, we had some first aid, so they got my husband some help to dress his wound.
Taiwan authorities say 70 people were rescued from 2 separate quarries, but 1 person was killed by falling rocks at a quarry.
In total, the death toll has risen to 10. At least 4 were killed inside Taroko National Park. It's a popular tourist attraction near the epicenter. Over 1,000 people were injured.
More than 700 people are still stranded, but most of them are in contact with rescue teams. Some 42 people are missing. Many of them are believed to be in Taroko National Park.
Entire sections of highways collapsed on the island's eastern coast, and landslides continue to pose a threat to people. In Hualien, which is the epicenter, workers have started demolishing damaged buildings. Residents in Taiwan recalled their fear after the island's worst earthquake in 25 years. NTD's Andrew Thomas finds out how locals are reacting to the natural disaster.
School children were terrified when an earthquake hit the eastern Taiwanese city of Hualien yesterday. One staff member described the chaos.
We could hear children screaming in the school. Indeed, it lasted for about a minute and all the children were terrified. Even when the tremors eased, some children couldn't walk. They were crying as they evacuated the building.
Linda Chen surveys the damage to her apartment. Her family believes it's now too dangerous to live in following yesterday's 7.2 magnitude earthquake. A 6.4 quake severely damaged their previous apartment in 2018. This is the second time one has forced her family to move.
Yesterday, when I was tidying up the apartment, I saw on the wall the record of the child's growth that I made, and I saw how this spot was damaged and felt really sad. I was thinking how the house could turn into something like this, and how the memories seemed to be destroyed all of a sudden.
Chen's son said he didn't risk spending too much time inside his old house.
It was cracked all over the place, so I didn't dare to stay in it for too long. It feels like it's about to fall after the next quake, and the walls are all cracked. Too outrageous, too serious.
Over 300 aftershocks followed the deadly quake, forcing people into emergency shelters. Most of Hualien avoided major damage. Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
A surveillance camera caught the moment in Taiwan when maternity workers quickly secured newborn babies when the earthquake struck. We can see staff at the Ma Sherry Maternity Center rushing to hold on to wobbling cots. Another staff member ran into the room to provide assistance.
The supervisor of the maternity center said despite their fears, the instinct to protect their young patients kicked in.
Of course we were scared, very scared, but I think this is the natural instinct of maternity staff. They are patients, and the safety of the babies is of utmost importance.
The Chinese Communist Party is using the earthquake in Taiwan to reiterate its political stance that Taiwan is part of China. In response, Taiwan condemned the CCP as shameless.
After the quake hit Taiwan yesterday, China's deputy representative to the United Nations thanked the international community for its concern.
Taiwan's foreign ministry condemned, quote, China's shameless use of the Taiwan earthquake to conduct cognitive operations internationally. That's Taiwan's term for what it calls China's psychological warfare.
The CCP claims democratically governed Taiwan as its own territory and the right to speak for it on the international stage. This, despite the CCP never having ruled the island and having no say in how it chooses its leaders.
Next up, New York State Supreme Court Judge Juan Merchan earlier this week expanded a gag order on former President Trump in his so-called hush money case. It stops the former president from publicly discussing family members of the court, family members of Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg, and all others named in the order, including jurors, potential jurors, witnesses, court staff, counsel, and their families. Trump's team pushed back against the order, and they're seeking to have Merchan recused, citing a conflict of interest over his daughter's business, which they say has profited heavily off the prosecution of Trump. For analysis, we're now joined by Will Scharf, a former federal prosecutor and now running for Attorney General of Missouri. Will, welcome. To begin with, on what grounds are Trump's team arguing conflict of interest here?
Well, I mean, the conflict of interest is profound. I have to be a little bit careful because I am actually subject to the gag order. But based on all the facts that have come to light, I think the case for recusal of Judge Merchan is quite strong. And we're hoping the New York appellate courts step in, as they have before in other cases against President Trump, to stand up for the rule of law, for ordinary proceedings, for ordinary procedures. We think our arguments are very, very strong there. And I would just, in terms of the gag order itself, I would just note that this is the first time in American history, President Trump is the first political candidate in American history to ever be subject to gag orders of the sort that we've seen in D.C. and now in New York. It's absolutely outrageous. It strikes to the heart of his First Amendment rights, the First Amendment rights of every American. And it just goes to show how wildly irregular all of these proceedings against him have been from their initiation.
And just looking ahead, why would you say that this is important to get this question of conflict of interest sorted now?
Well, look, we're scheduled to go to trial on April 15th. If nothing changes, President Trump will be in New York on April 15th with our team for the commencement of trial. Time is of the essence here, and if there is an issue demanding recusal, requiring recusal, obviously the courts need to take rapid action before irreparable injury is inflicted on my client, on President Trump. And just in terms of the eyes of the American people are on this whole series of events. And I just think it's so important that these sorts of issues are given a full and fair airing, which obviously this gag order helps prevent.
Yeah, and so this case has been in the works for quite some time, but the timing of it is, comes in an election year. What do you say to the timing of this case and the outcome of it, and how important that is this year?
Look, this case relates to events and actions that occurred in 2016 and 2017 at the latest. The idea that there should be this rush to trial at the height of election season, it speaks to this case being on a fundamentally political timeline, not on what we would consider to be a legally appropriate timeline. And again, I would just emphasize all of these cases, the irregularity of them, the rules that have been bent and stretched to force President Trump to go through this legal process at the height of election season, it really cuts to the heart of the rule of law, our constitutional system of governance. We're living in really scary times, but we're certainly hopeful that in the days ahead, decisive action is taken by the New York courts. And if not, we feel like we have very strong arguments to present at trial in this case. I think this case should have never been brought to begin with. So one way or the other, we remain optimistic, and I know President Trump is optimistic.
Yeah, and so if this conflict of interest issue is not resolved in Trump's team's eyes, what's the next step? Are there other methods of recourse here?
We have obviously an appellate pathway up through the New York appellate courts. There's potentially a federal cause of action here, just given how wildly irregular and deleterious to President Trump's rights these proceedings have been. I would say that for now, from the perspective of our team, all options are on the table, and we're going to continue to vigorously protect President Trump's rights in court.
All right. Thank you so much, Will Scharf. Great to speak with you.
Great to be with you guys, as always.
Next up, a Democratic Nebraska state senator is changing parties to become a Republican. Mike McDonald says he's switching sides because of his Christian faith and his views on abortion. McDonald won election in 2016 and 2020 as a pro-life Democratic candidate. Then local Democrats voted not to seat him as a delegate and won't share party resources. And at the state level, the Democratic Party also voted to censure him.
The Nebraska Democratic Party denies that the censure vote had anything to do with his personal pro-life views. Instead, they said it was to reaffirm the party's stance on abortion access. McDonald says being a Christian is more important to him than being a Democrat.
Now, this move could help former President Trump in this year's presidential election. That's because Nebraska doesn't have a winner-takes-all electoral system.
So even if Republicans win the state, Democrats have generally been taking home one of the state's 5 electoral college votes.
Trump and Nebraska's governor have advocated to change the system, but the measure failed to pass a procedural vote in Nebraska's legislature last night.
Still, one more Republican state senator is unlikely to help, as it failed by a significant margin.
Coming up, the Biden administration is allegedly flying hundreds of thousands of immigrants to Florida. Governor Ron DeSantis now responding.
And California's minimum wage law for fast food workers is now in effect. But for some business owners, it's been a disaster. More in just a moment, here on NTD News Today.
I am so glad you ladies are here. You each have your own rooms. Thank you. Get settled in. I'll call you for dinner. Adopting teen sisters, it's a lot. Girls, you're gonna be late. You want breakfast? No thanks, we're good. They're always in their own world. What'd you get there? Twice the work. Twice the surprises. Just try it. But if you think of it that way, they're also twice as fulfilling. I think you should ask her yourself.
Is it okay to call you Mom?
Of course you can.
I go by Jackie. I'm 44 years old. I had 3 kids at the time and single mother. I was working 60 hours a week. Still couldn't pay the bills. Skipped meals so that they could eat. It's been hard because one thing falls into place, 10 things fall out of place. You know, I just can't do this alone and make it work.
1 in 5 children face hunger in America, and food costs are rising. But everyone needs nourishing food to thrive, and they can when we work together so our neighbors can feed their families. Call or go online right now to join Feeding America with your gift of just $19 a month, only 63 cents a day. Together, thanks to a nationwide network of food banks, dedicated volunteers, and the monthly support of people like you, we can fill plates with nutritious food for families across America.
One day my mother came over to my house and said, "There's a meeting at the pantry." I said, "Okay." And I went. There were some ladies in there. They were from the food bank. They asked several questions. Some of those were about me and my story, but it helped me to open up a little bit.
We're getting closer to the day when no one in America faces hunger, but we can't do it without you. Call or go online now. Visit helpfeedingamerica.org and give $19 a month, just 63 cents a day. 98% of donations go directly to help millions of people facing hunger, from coast to coast and in your own community. And when you give by credit card, we'll send you this exclusive canvas grocery bag to show you are a part of a movement of supporters working together to help end hunger.
I have people that I can trust. I have hope.
Please call now or make your monthly donation at helpfeedingamerica.org. Working together, we can end hunger in America.
Welcome back. We now turn to our legal correspondent, Arlene Richards, for the latest on the Trump criminal cases. Arlene, thank you for joining us. So, what can you tell us about the hush money case trial?
So the judge has just denied one of Trump's motions to delay the trial until after the Supreme Court hears the presidential immunity claims. Now, the judge said that it was too late, that he should have filed it earlier, but Trump's attorneys had argued that this ruling could have some impact on the case in New York because those prosecutors in New York are probably going to bring in evidence about him that related to when he was still the president. So they think that that ruling is going to be relevant, but here the judge said that it's too late. Now, there is another motion that's been filed that he hasn't ruled on yet, in which they are also asking for the trial to be delayed, and that's because of the media publicity. Now, they're arguing here that the media publicity might lead the jury to automatically think Trump is guilty. But the prosecution says, well, we don't want to wait until the media dies down, and besides that, it's your own fault for the media being so hyped up. So we'll have to see how Judge Mershon rules on that a motion, but right now he has denied their request to delay the trial.
Right now, moving to the classified documents case, Special Prosecutor Jack Smith really blasted Judge Eileen Cannon in a court filing. What was that about?
So this is what we talked about a couple of days ago, where she had asked both sides to submit proposed jury instructions, and she asked them to include elements from the Presidential Records Act. Now, you have to know that none of the claims made in the indictment relate to the Presidential Records Act at all. He never mentions it in the indictment. He only talks about the Espionage Act, and he treats Trump as if he's a regular citizen. But if the judge decides to allow the Presidential Records Act to come in, which is what Trump's attorneys have asked for, then that means he has some protections under the Presidential Records Act in terms of what he did with taking the records out of the White House and transporting them to Mar-a-Lago. But Jack Smith is saying, no, that never happened. He wasn't the president when he did that. All the activities that we're talking about here happened after he left office. And we have no claims against him under the Presidential Records Act. And they're really vigorously trying to, find out whether Judge Cannon is planning on letting that come in or not. Because he says, if you're going to let that come in, and we haven't made any claims under that, we're going to appeal. So Trump has said that Jack Smith should be sanctioned for the way that he has addressed the court. But we'll have to see what Cannon decides and what Jack Smith does next.
Yeah, and the timing is so important. I remember the last time you said that's why the jury instructions came out earlier this time, but we'll have to see. Arlene, thank you so much for your insight.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Around 500,000 workers at California fast food chains began receiving a $20 an hour minimum wage this week, and that's up from the state's previous $16 minimum wage, and it applies to chains with 60 or more locations nationwide. Business owners in the state weighed in on the change.
While workers say the raise helps pay the bills, business owners like Brian Holm are worried about higher operating costs. He's already increased prices between 5 and 10% in response to the new minimum.
And eventually, as time goes on, if we're not making a profit, we would have to close down.
For 7 years, he and his wife have owned 2 Vitality Bowls superfood cafe franchises in South San Jose. Between the 2 locations, they have about 3 dozen employees, which they say are mostly young adults in high school and college. California Governor Gavin Newsom said one goal of the pay bump passed last September. was to make the state's economy more inclusive. 66-year-old Home isn't so sure.
Kind of a catch-22, I know, where people want higher wages, but at the same time, the costs to run the business, it doesn't work out. Maybe corporate stores can, but most of the small stores are, run by, people of color, people that have immigrated, women, and, seniors like me, right? I'm a senior and I'm trying to run a business for my family. And, if it goes down, then my family goes down too.
However, fast food workers like Ingrid Velorio have a brighter outlook on the wage bump.
I think the new minimum wage somewhat alleviates the heavy cost of living in California. That's what this new salary does, ease the cost of living a little.
Velorio has worked at Jack in the Box for 4 years. In that time, she has seen her employers cut hours and increase work. And now she says they're upset they have to pay their workers more.
Each employee does the work of 2 or 3 people. And the saddest thing right now that we're experiencing as employees is that instead of the employer being happy about this increase, a minimal one for the worker, instead they're angry that they have to raise their employees' salaries.
The economic bottom line of the hourly bump is not clear-cut. Some studies suggest a minimum wage hike can reduce hours in hiring, like the Vitality Bowl owner Home mentioned, while others point to better outcomes for workers. And it also remains unclear how much pressure businesses not affected by the law will feel to raise their wages to match those that are.
Florida Governor Ron DeSantis now commenting on an immigration program by the Biden administration. It allows migrants to fly directly into the U.S. A report this week found that over 80% of those flights land in Florida.
First of all, it's an illegal program. They're bringing people in who don't have a right to be in this country. Someone that Biden flew into America, ended up in Massachusetts, now is under charges for sexual assault against a developmentally disabled 14-year-old girl.
Since last fall, over 380,000 migrants flew directly into the U.S. That's part of a parole program started by the Biden administration.
A report this week by the Center for Immigration Studies found over 320,000 immigrants landed in Florida. DeSantis says the state hasn't noticed a sudden uptick in immigrants arriving in Florida.
He added they might land in Florida and then head to sanctuary cities like New York or Chicago. And an April snowstorm, the National Weather Service predicts a long-duration winter storm will produce significant snow and gusty winds across the Great Lakes and Northeast. Nearly 12 million people, mainly across northern New England, are under winter weather alerts.
Heavy, wet snow is expected across northern Wisconsin and upper Michigan Thursday. Up to 2 feet of snow and high winds prompted a blizzard warning.
In the Northeast, some areas could get more than a foot of snow.
Earlier in the week, severe weather spawned tornadoes and damaging storms from the south to the Ohio Valley. At least 3 people died and several more were injured. Baltimore Mayor Brandon Scott says the city will provide $1 million in wage subsidies to support workers after the bridge disaster.
The mayor says funds will offer businesses support to help keep employees on the payroll during work disruption. The action is similar to the COVID-19 relief programs.
Scott says the money is an important first step, but not nearly enough to cover all businesses or workers affected. Baltimore port workers are losing a combined $2 million in daily wages.
The construction company that had several workers on the bridge when it was struck has set up a relief fund for the families of those killed.
President Biden is set to travel to Baltimore tomorrow to survey the damage from last week's deadly collapse.
And New York City Marathon organizers will soon have to pay a bridge toll like other commuters if New York transit officials have their way. The Metropolitan Transportation Authority, or MTA, is demanding the New York road runners pay roughly $750,000 for use of the Rosano Narrows Bridge.
The MTA says the fee represents the estimated toll revenue lost when the nation's longest suspension bridge is closed, but the Roadrunners group has pushed back.
They argue that the MTA enjoys increased revenue from greater transit ridership during Marathon Week. The organization also says the 2019 marathon generated about $425 million for the city. And Kansas City voters rejected a sales tax yesterday that would have funded renovations for the Chiefs' Arrowhead Stadium. Now, Dallas Mayor Eric Johnson is hoping the team relocates. Johnson wrote, "Welcome home, Dallas Texans," on X after voters failed to pass the measure. The Chiefs were originally the Dallas Texans before the organization moved to Kansas City.
Texas is already home to two NFL teams, the Dallas Cowboys and the Houston Texans. San Diego voters in 2016 defeated a plan to raise hotel taxes for a new football stadium.
The Chargers ended up at a privately financed stadium in Los Angeles.
The team shares it with the Rams, who relocated from St. Louis. Chase Bank says it's launching a new way for brands to market directly to people based on their spending history. The bank says a new division will bring its 80 million customers targeted deals and discounts. The deals will be personalized to customers who will have the option to activate the promotions on the Chase app or on the bank's website.
It's a similar approach taken by many businesses lately by selling ad space on websites and apps with targeted messaging from users' data. Still to come, not all U.S. states are technically covered by the NATO military alliance. Find out why Hawaii is excluded and why some experts say that needs to change.
And Finland now indefinitely extending the closure of land border crossings with Russia. And they're adding more points of entry to the list. We'll have the details soon when we return.
How'd it happen?
She showed up dead on arrival.
This never gets easier.
It does when you call CarShield before your car breaks down. Look at these prices. The camshaft, transmission, engine.
Don't people know? A plan through CarShield could protect up to 5,000 parts and systems.
You hate to see it.
An out-of-warranty car is gonna break down eventually.
Right, which is why they need a plan through CarShield. Those expensive repair bills get paid and at the mechanic of their choice. They're notifying the family.
Poor guy, he doesn't even know what's coming.
Another victim of senselessly expensive repair bills. Can't save them all.
But we can keep trying. Didn't have to end this way. If he'd have just called CarShield before his car broke down.
Exactly.
Protect yourself from the unprecedented rise in cost for parts and repairs. Call now to save money with your price lock guarantee. Call 800-429-5128.
Hello, I'm Mike Lindell, and I'm here to tell you about my new product from MyPillow, towels that actually work. Watch this absorbency test. Here's another towel that we randomly went out and bought. Here's one of my towels with the nice design. I don't know if you can see this, but you could line a swimming pool with this. I mean, this is crazy. Get rid of it. Towels that actually work. What a concept. I'm interrupting this commercial to let you know you can get our 6-piece My Towels, regular $69.98, now only $29.98. Or you can save 25% on our brand new kitchen towels, made with the same technology as our famous My Towels. Also, we have bath sheets, bath towels, washcloths, hand towels, and so much more. And the best part, with your promo code, your entire order ships absolutely free. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use that promo code to get deep discounts on all My Towels. And for a limited time, your order ships absolutely free.
When I drink it, the first thing was I feel the warmth in my tummy. It's kind of like gently radiating out, you know, a kind of a very comforting warmth. And it was really good, actually. I felt much better. I did feel, actually, an effect. And I find that it is actually better when I take it regularly.
It's actually steamed and dried 9 times. And so it's really, the essence is really extracted.
Then the second time, I tried it really like on an empty stomach and just 2 teaspoons of it, and over a few times. And wow, that was a big difference, because suddenly I could feel, wow, I was very good energized. I didn't have to eat. I could work outside in the garden for a couple of hours, and I still felt very well. And I was impressed by that. So I think it's a good product.
Welcome back. NATO foreign ministers celebrated the 75th anniversary of the organization today as the war in Ukraine enters its third year. Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg said the alliance strengthens regional security for all members.
Europe needs America for its security. Fair burden sharing is essential, and Europe is investing more, much more. This year, the majority of NATO allies will invest at least 2% of their GDP in defense. At the same time, North America also needs Europe.
NATO started with 12 members, founded in response to the Soviet Union and the beginning of the Cold War. At its heart is the concept of collective defense.
Article 5 of the treaty makes an attack on one member considered an attack on all.
75 years later, NATO has 32 members and has taken a central role in world affairs.
Now Russia's war in Ukraine has led European governments to view Moscow as a major security threat once again.
And the US presidential election this fall offers a sharp contrast in terms of the American role in NATO. Let's take a look back at NATO's beginnings and the new challenges the organization faces. NTD's Daniel Monahan has more.
The alliance dates back to April 4th, 1949, when foreign ministers from 12 countries signed the North Atlantic Treaty in Washington, D.C.
This treaty is a simple document. The nations which sign it agree to abide by the peaceful principles of the United Nations.
NATO's founding member countries were Belgium, Canada, Denmark, France, Iceland, Italy, Luxembourg, the Netherlands, Norway, Portugal, the United Kingdom, and the United States. Senior policy analyst Robert Benson says the existence of NATO has maintained a really durable peace within the Euro-Atlantic zone.
The history of Europe has been one of, perpetual conflict. Up until the realization of NATO 75 years ago in 1949.
The recent accession of Sweden and Finland is the most significant expansion of the alliance in decades. NATO's expansion to now include 32 members is seen by many as a blow to Russian President Vladimir Putin.
Before the war started, I told Putin that if he invaded Ukraine, NATO would not only get stronger, but would get more united.
Biden says Putin got exactly what he didn't want.
He wanted the Finlandization of NATO, but he's getting the NATOization of Finland along with Sweden.
The Russian leader has sought to prevent any further strengthening of the alliance. Analysts say one of NATO's challenges is the transformation to refocus on defending against any Russian attack. This after decades in which NATO concentrated on missions beyond its borders, such as in Afghanistan or the Balkans. NATO will also have to manage differences over how involved it should become in Asia. The United States is pushing for a greater role in countering China, while others such as France insist NATO must maintain focus on the North Atlantic area. The 2024 election will have a significant effect on NATO as well. Policy analyst Robert Benson calls Biden a true Atlanticist. That's someone who believes cooperation between North America and Europe is essential.
I think that he has demonstrated, particularly after the illegal and unjustified invasion of Ukraine, that NATO matters.
Former President Trump has used a firmer hand with the alliance, berating them to contribute more.
The one that benefits really the least is the United States. We benefit the least. We're helping Europe.
Trump says NATO is now taking in billions of dollars more because of him. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
NATO recently welcomed its newest member, Sweden, but while some countries are vying to get in, there is one very special U.S. state that's excluded from the NATO Pact.
According to NATO's treaty agreement, Hawaii is not technically covered by the security alliance. If a foreign power attacked Hawaii, NATO members would not be obligated to rise to the Aloha state's defense. The reason why Hawaii is not included in NATO is its geography. Article 6 of NATO's treaty document limits the geographic scope covered by the alliance. It says any member state's island territories must be in the North Atlantic, north of the Tropic of Cancer, and Hawaii is in the Pacific, not the North Atlantic. Some experts say times have changed since the treaty was signed in 1949 and argue today's political situation in the Indo-Pacific might require a rethink. They say Hawaii could play a vital role in countering aggression from Communist China and North Korea. Hawaii is home to the Pearl Harbor Navy base and the headquarters of the Indo-Pacific Command. John Hemmings is the Senior Director of the Indo-Pacific Foreign and Security Policy Program at the Pacific Forum. He says Hawaii's exclusion from NATO removes an element of deterrence when it comes to the possibility of a Chinese strike on Hawaii during any potential campaign over Taiwan. Hemmings says, quote, "Why would we not put that element of deterrence at our disposal? Why would we leave that off the table if it would actually stop China from an invasion of Taiwan?"
And more from Europe, a joint effort by Helsinki and Washington to fend off foreign disinformation. The U.S. today signing a memorandum of understanding with Finland.
Officials from both countries are in Brussels today for a NATO meeting.
To combat one of the new challenges of our time, which is misinformation. Information that governments use to exploit divisions in our respective societies.
The NATO meeting marks exactly 1 year since Finland joined the alliance. This came in direct response to Russia's invasion of Ukraine.
Russia yesterday accused NATO of returning to a Cold War mindset. This as tensions between the two sides are at the highest they've been in decades.
And a cruise ship will set sail again after being stuck in Spain because of invalid visas.
Spanish authorities didn't allow around 70 Bolivian nationals to disembark the vessel in Barcelona. This prevented the ship with hundreds on board from continuing its journey.
The Bolivian passengers were later removed from the boat and taken to a transit zone in the port. They were not granted permission to enter Spanish territory.
The passengers appeared to have valid visas when they boarded the vessel in South America, but Spanish authorities later said they're invalid.
The Bolivian embassy in Spain suggested the passengers might have fallen for a visa scam in South Africa. Finland is indefinitely extending the closure of land border crossings with Russia. It's also going to add several ports to a list where travel from Russia is prohibited.
The European nation shut its land borders with Russia late last year. This came amid an influx of people from countries including Syria and Somalia. Finland accuses Moscow of weaponizing migration in retaliation for joining NATO.
Despite the border closure, a few immigrants have continued to arrive from Russia. Finland believes the numbers could rise significantly as temperatures start rising in spring. And Germany is restructuring its military. This includes a new central command and a dedicated branch for cyberspace.
The country's defense minister made the announcement today. This expands Germany's military overhaul, which began in response to Russia's invasion of Ukraine. The minister says no country should have the idea of attacking Germany.
The defense minister says the German military needs an additional $7 billion in 2025 budget. That's as lawmakers try to hit a long-neglected NATO spending target. And how was the Afghanistan withdrawal managed? 3 top State Department officials delivered testimony behind closed doors about the final days of U.S. presence in Afghanistan. They told House investigators they created the plans from scratch after the fall of Kabul in 2021.
The interviews are part of an ongoing investigation into the 2021 evacuation that involved the death of 13 U.S. service members.
Back in 2021, John Bass, Jim DeHart, and Jane Howell were rushed to the country. According to interview transcripts, they had little time to prepare and no evacuation plan.
House Foreign Affairs Committee Republican Chairman Michael McCaul is planning to put out a report on the investigation later this year. The Palestinian Authority has formally requested the United Nations Security Council to reconsider its 2011 application for full membership in the UN. I spoke with Aryeh Lightstone. He's the former special envoy for the Abraham Accords. Aryeh, welcome and thanks for being with us. Now, what's your reaction to the Palestinian Authority applying for full UN membership?
David, thank you so much for having me. I would have to tell you that the definition of insanity is trying the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. Perhaps we could have a different definition of insanity, which is what will the Palestinians do in the United Nations? They anticipate that the reward for launching and supporting the murderous, horrendous attack on October 7th will be international acceptance of a Palestinian state. And indeed, they will get many votes, but it will not clear through the UN in order for them to be able to obfuscate or to go around Israel to be able to declare themselves somehow unilaterally a state. It just won't work.
Now, can you explain for us why the United States is expected to block the move, as we've heard? And what would be the global implications of gaining UN membership?
Well, the global implications of gaining UN membership would give essentially the Palestinians an equal foot at the international table. So the International Criminal Court of Justice, the International Criminal Court, they would be able to have complaints against Israel as one state against another state. And certainly they make enough claims in those places anyways, but ultimately the United States has decided, as did most of the international community, that the results of whatever happens between Israel and the Palestinians needs to ultimately be negotiated and agreed upon by the Israelis and the Palestinians. Bypassing that in any way, shape, or form creates an unyielding obstacle that Israel will just not be able to live with, and the United States of America should be standing with Israel.
Now, the Palestinian Authority wasn't able to get into the full membership in the past. Is it for the same reasons as now?
Yeah, it's for the same reasons as now, but it's even more ludicrous that they would anticipate that the results would have changed after October 7th. It's important for your audience to know that Hamas ran Gaza as an independent state since 2006. This is what happens when you have an independent Palestinian state without any of the trappings of a regular state, and therefore it cannot be that the reward for October 7th is a Palestinian state in the West Bank.
So what are the next steps for the Palestinian Authority's membership application?
Well, they'll go through all the processes in the United Nations. They'll get the support from the great majority of nations, but ultimately it comes up to the UN Security Council, where the United States of America has a veto. And if President Biden wants to stick with traditional U.S. policy, he will exercise that veto and make sure that the Palestinians don't do an end around our ally Israel.
Now, as far as timeline, when can we expect more development on this? I heard something about a potential vote in April. I mean, what do you have here?
Yeah, you can have the initial vote as early as April. I don't anticipate anything getting to the Security Council before May or maybe even early June. But the rumblings will be there about the Palestinians making this international play.
All right. R.A. Lightstone, thank you so much for your insight. We appreciate it.
Thank you, David.
Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen arrived in China today. She plans to press her Chinese counterparts about China's, quote, unfair trade practices and industrial overcapacity. Yellen says this is a threat to the global economy.
We have agreed that it's important to both of us that we don't want to decouple our economies. We want to continue, and we think we both benefit from trade and investment, but that it needs to be in a level playing field.
Yellen said last week that China's state support has led to substantial overinvestment in steel, aluminum, and other industries.
This led to cheap exports of solar panels, electric cars, and lithium-ion batteries, which forced manufacturing to contract in other countries.
Yellen said the U.S. would consider imposing tariffs and other trade barriers on China to protect its industries.
The trip happens right after President Biden talked to the CCP leader Xi Jinping on the phone. This is Yellen's second visit to China within 1 year. NTD's China in Focus has a special report on how the United States helped Communist China grow strong enough to take on the West. Tune in this Saturday at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time to learn more.
Still to come, craftsmen in Kosovo bend and shape thin metal wires into beautiful and intricate pieces of jewelry. Now they're calling for help to keep this centuries-old art form alive.
A new art exhibition shows just how influential the Italian masters are. It features paintings, sculpture, and textiles side by side with the art they inspired. More shortly here on NTD News Today.
We all know that words have power. They set things in motion.
And make us happy
or sad.
But there's one word that stands out because when people say it, lives are changed.
It's not a big word.
It's itsy bitsy.
It's only 3 little letters.
But when you say it,
the life of a kid like me can be changed.
So, what is this special word?
It may surprise you.
It's yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes to becoming a monthly supporter of Shriners Hospitals for Children.
That's right. Your monthly support allows the doctors and nurses at Shriners Hospitals for Children to give the most amazing care anywhere and change the lives of kids like me.
And me.
And me. Because people like you have said yes. Now I can play football.
And I can play catch.
And I can walk.
So what do you say? Will you say yes right now?
It's so easy.
All you have to do is pick up the phone or go to loveshriners.org right now and say yes. When you say yes to giving just $19 a month, only 63 cents a day, we'll send you this adorable Love to the Rescue blanket as a reminder of all the kids you're helping every day. My life is filled with possibility because of the monthly support of people just like you who called the number on your screen and said yes.
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 Your yes is making a difference in my life and the lives of so many other kids like me.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for giving.
Please call or go online now. If operators are busy, call again or go to loveshriners.org to say yes right away.
I have never seen a production any better than this, anywhere.
Breathtaking. It is absolutely stunning.
I feel better about the world. I feel uplifted.
Invigorating. It was encouraging. Gave me hope.
This has just been therapy for the soul.
It's a must-see. Must-see.
Make sure you see it. Make sure you see it.
Coming to Lincoln Center, April 3rd through the 14th. Buy tickets now at shenyun.com.
There's always a searching process for beauty. You know it when you see it.
For the day's top headlines and the news you need to know, tune in right here to NTD Evening News.
Craftsmen in Kosovo are calling for help to keep a centuries-old art form alive.
Local artisans bend and shape thin metal wires into beautiful and intricate pieces of silver jewelry.
NTD's Andrew Thomas has more on the traditional craft.
In a workshop in Prizren, a handful of filigree masters work to maintain their traditions. The city in southern Kosovo has an international reputation for jewelry making. Passionate craftsmen make a wide array of products for sale.
I feel very good with my craft. I feel good and relaxed because every time I produce something different.
But these artisans say younger generations lack interest in their craft.
We have had assistance from the municipality. We have had assistance from UNDP to hold training courses. But the assistance has not been great. We are trying to teach and open a school which would prepare new masters in 3 to 4 years' time, and those who are trained would be hired here.
For centuries, craftspeople here have worked with primitive hand tools. They've produced everything from rings, earrings, and necklaces to tobacco boxes and ashtrays. And their methods are unique to Kosovo.
The technique we are working with makes our craft unique because filigree is worked with even in Russia, in Poland, and I can count other countries. But it should be well known that the filigree craft in Prizren has been is and will be the mother, the source of the craft.
Once an enterprise with 150 filigree masters, this workshop now has just 5 working side by side. The craftsmen use gold, silver, and other precious metals. Some works include precious stones. But is the art form itself equally cherished?
It would be good if society, that is, the government, proper authorities do not let such crafts with a value in themselves get lost. Whoever can come to help these crafts, it would be good not to let them get lost, because that would be not only a state loss, but also a national loss.
The summer wedding season is the busiest time of year, and manufacturers report problems fulfilling orders. More filigree masters will have to be trained if the tradition expects to survive. Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
For the first time, a large selection of works by a 19th century British art movement is on display in Italy, alongside the works of the Italian masters who inspired them. The exhibition features over 300 works, including paintings, sculptures, textiles, and jewelry. NTD's Andrew Thomas has the details.
Young English artists of the pre-Raphaelite Brotherhood founded their movement to challenge the art establishment. Now their pieces are featured beside the works of Italian masters like Michelangelo and Botticelli at Museo Civico in Forlì, Italy. Pre-Raphaelites' modern Renaissance boasts over 300 works, including paintings, sculptures, drawings, furniture, ceramics, and more.
This is the first time that the works of the British pre-Raphaelite artists have been brought together with works of the Italian Renaissance of the kind that inspired them to make their art in such large numbers.
The Pre-Raphaelite Brotherhood was founded in secret in London by 7 Royal Academy students. Between ages 19 and 23, they were bored and frustrated by the rigid traditions that dominated Victorian British art.
They said, that's enough. We want something much more exciting. We want art that is much more authentic and passionate, that is more tightly drawn and more brightly colored. We want to make people more excited about art in terms of its emotional power.
Cast in the guise of biblical and Shakespearean heroines, the women of pre-Raphaelites were unique figures.
There's an identifiable pre-Raphaelite woman, usually with lots of curly hair, big hair, and very strong facial features, and often with flowing, loose garments, not like the fashionable dress of the period.
The new artistic movement was born in 1848, the year of revolutions in Europe. Their style reflected the socio-political change that was taking place. Instead of a reactionary return to past styles, theirs was a modern, visionary idea to give Italian works a new life.
They are trying to make a revolution by looking back, not looking forward, like, for example, the Futurists. They're very much thinking about art before Raphael, thus pre-Raphaelite, and they're saying this is more exciting, more raw, more passionate, more authentic, a little more naive, a little more quirky than Raphael and his followers.
The exhibition comes full circle with a number of works by the next generation of Italian artists. Pre-Raphaelites' Modern Renaissance runs until June 30th. Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
And in France, the Aquatic Center for the Paris Summer Olympics is officially ready. The new facility was inaugurated earlier today. The Aquatic Center is one of only 2 facilities being built in the Paris region for the Olympics this summer. The site is expected to host the artistic swimming and diving events, as well as the qualifying stages of the water polo tournament.
There are 5,000 seats for the public, including 2,000 removable seats. This is the most expensive structure in the Paris Olympics, costing over $160 million. Minor work, such as cleaning and finishing touches, remains to be done for the site to be fully ready.
During the opening ceremony, a French diver had an embarrassing moment. He was about to dive into the water when Alexis Jainard slipped on the board and fell instead.
Jainard landed on his back and hit the board before plunging into the water. In a response on social media, Jainard joked about his fall, mentioning that his ego took the biggest hit. Here's a story to make us smile. A newly born Bactrian camel is delighting zoo staff in the German city of Cologne. Let's take a look.
This baby Bactrian camel was born at Cologne Zoo on March 10th, and he's already wandering around his enclosure.
His name is Omar, and he is unusually white.
Omar is a young male domestic camel that was born here at Cologne Zoo a few weeks ago. It's the second young animal in a relatively short space of time. We're delighted because we now have a little kindergarten and there's a lot going on here now.
In some regions of the world, white Bactrian camels are considered sacred.
Among the Old World camels, there's a distinction between the one-humped type and the two-humped Bactrian camel.
Cologne Zoo has been keeping the domesticated form of Bactrian camels for decades.
The zoo director says domestic camels are not that special, but wild camels are highly endangered.
And in Belgrade, the capital of Serbia, the zoo welcomed the birth of a baby zebra.
This male baby zebra was born 3 days ago, and today he was already walking around his enclosure, keeping close to his mother's side.
Oh, it looks so sweet. The zoo said they are still looking for a name for this little one. And that's all for today's news. Thank you for watching.
And don't forget that starting on Monday, April 8th, NTD News Today will switch to a 3-hour newscast.
So tune in from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern for more stories.
For around-the-clock original news coverage, visit us at ntd.com or download our NTD app.
How'd it happen?
She showed up dead on arrival.
This never gets easier.
It does when you call CarShield before your car breaks down. Look at these prices. The camshaft, transmission, engine.
Don't people know? A plan through CarShield could protect up to 5,000 parts and systems.
You hate to see it.
An out-of-warranty car is gonna break down eventually.
Right, which is why they need a plan through CarShield. Those expensive repair bills get paid and at the mechanic of their choice. They're notifying the family.
Poor guy. He doesn't even know what's coming.
Another victim of senselessly expensive repair bills. Can't save them all.
But we can keep trying. Didn't have to end this way. If he'd have just called CarShield before his car broke down.
Exactly.
Protect yourself from the unprecedented rise in cost for parts and repairs. Call now to save money with your price lock guarantee. Call 800-429-5128.
One in 5 children worldwide.